There was some immense highs, but there was also a real low and a real reality check when news came through that Larry didn't survive. Lucky enough to go to 3 World Cups.
Yeah, talk to us about these experiences.
Been to Brazil. Brazil was the first one, which was just astonishing because it is the football in its purest sense. You divide the pie chart. At the moment, we're sitting on an 11 share, so 11% of overall radio listening audience listening to us. In the summer, in the weeks and months that passed, Nova came to us. They were making some arrangements with their current lineup, and there was going to be an availability for us to step up in breakfast.
An ex-guest D.
Yes.
He's probably used to asking the questions. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if he probably feels like a fish out of water. He looked very, very comfortable, to be honest. And that's the great Clint Stanaway with us. Clint,
yes,
welcome.
Clint.
Am I allowed to clap myself in?
Yeah, why not? You're the second
I'm
person
very
to do
comfortable,
that.
actually.
Good.
I was just saying, before I got here, I'm a curious person, right? So I'm a bit fish out of water, being the guest on a podcast.
Sure.
Done so many podcasts where I'm asking the questions, so this should be a
enjoy
bit
it.
of fun.
Enjoy it.
Should be a bit of fun. It's very therapeutic.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. But speaking of, you've literally just come from 3 hours on radio to come, and this is normally your downtime. So talk to us about your current
Melbourne's #1 breakfast show.
Yeah, exactly
FM
right.
breakfast show.
We will be bringing that. We will be bringing that up later for sure. But talk to us about your day to day at the moment, because you said you've got breakfast radio.
Yep.
Now you've got a bit of downtime. You've coming to join us, which is fantastic. But then Channel 9 tonight. So what does that typically look like?
It's frantic. I love being busy, but it does have its pitfalls.
Yes.
Obviously, but typically my day is, breakfast radio kicks off 6 to 9 typically, but there's a lot of prep, so we sort of get in there about 5:30 in the morning. Quick meeting, jump on air. There's always post-show meetings, post-show podcast. And then generally I do a reset if I'm working at Channel 9. Hopefully do a little bit of a gym workout just to sort of get rid of a few of the cobwebs. And then hit Channel 9 and the news isn't on until 6 o'clock at night. So a couple of nights a week when I'm doubling up, like the day can be sort of 12, 13, 14 hours, which is a lot. But I'm sort of just, at the moment, just keeping a pretty good grip of organisation, just making sure I'm organised, get it done. Well, I got another week left of the year at Channel 9, and then we start to sort of roll down for Christmas, which is nice.
Are you a diary? Are you a physical diary guy? Are you the Google Calendar?
I never was. So before breakfast radio, I was probably the most disorganised bloke in Melbourne. But just by virtue of the early wake-ups and the fact that there's a lot going on, I'm also sort of travelling every Friday to Sydney to host the Today Show on Channel 9 on a Saturday and Sunday. So you just have to be organised. And it was never a strong suit of mine. I was never a morning person. But now I'm waking up. The alarm goes off at 5 a.m. every morning. So I'm working 7 mornings a week at the moment. So it's busy.
Yeah.
But you sort of got to make hay while the sun shines. And that's sort of how I'm treating it.
Yeah.
A lot of people sort of ask about burnout. And I make sure that I get as much time as I can away from the media and from my work. Because otherwise you go a little stir crazy.
Yeah, 100%. And we're going to come back to doing a bit of research on you. I'm interested to go back a little bit to hearing about burnout and things like that. But before we do, I want to dive into Channel 9 and just hearing a little bit about the news. Because, again, we're talking about curiosity. This is something that I'm always been curious about, and I've heard rumours. But when it comes to the 6 o'clock news...
Can I ask you a question first?
Yeah, go.
Do you watch the news?
No.
So how do you consume your news?
TikTok.
Right.
I was having this conversation. I don't know if you're the same, but like a lot of us now, we either just... actually... You read the paper every day.
Yeah, I've become a paper reader, yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind that.
I get it delivered.
I mean, here's the thing, and news in a traditional sense, it's the evolution of news is such that people are getting their news in very different ways. So we have to pivot as well.
Yeah.
Our news bulletin of a night, our 6 p.m. news will be watched by, say, 250, 300,000 people, 300,000 being a pretty high watermark these days. Whereas you go back 10, 15 years, you're looking at 500,000, 600,000. But things like catch-up television, the use of apps and all the rest of it, or what we call 9 Now, the viewership or those consuming it is just going through the roof. So it's sort of, there's always going to be a place for traditional news.
Yes.
But people are just consuming it in different ways. So we've sort of got to pivot as well.
Well, I do actually want to come back to modern media and news a little bit later on. But what I was going to ask in the bulletin, how does it actually work? Does the anchor person actually have say? Because I heard this rumor once upon a time that the difference between different channels was the anchor actually they decided, all right, this has got to be one story, 1, 2, 3, 4. Does that work? How does it work?
I mean, there's a hierarchy. So we've got a news director who will dictate effectively the rundown order, what he wants where, but also it's very collaborative. We'll have 2-3 production meetings a day where reporters will sort of give us an update on their stories. There's always breaking news happening, and Alicia Loxley and Tom Steinfort, who are our 6 p.m. news readers, are very active in those meetings and will often sort of give their feedback. And yeah, they do have a say. And in a sports sense, I have a say as well, and I've got a lot more control of the rundown and what I or we as a sport department think is the most important story of the day. We just had a discussion before because one of Australia's greatest, if not greatest ever swimmers has just retired, Emma McKeon. And we're sort of thinking, well, she's Australia's greatest ever swimmer, in terms of gold medals won at Olympics. So where does that story sit? Is that as important as a cricket story, for instance? I would argue, yeah, it is. So we have these cool little debates, and there's obviously disagreements. And I like to think we get it right most of the times, but I'm here to say sometimes we don't get it right, which is fine as well.
In the world of, you mentioned modern media, from a personal standpoint, I feel like I probably steered away from your traditional news of a 6 p.m. of a weekday because the instilling of fear sometimes.
Yeah, there's not a lot of good news.
No. So have you found yourself, I mean, I know early days you were doing a lot of tougher stories. You were out traveling, going to the more, traumatic type experiences and reporting those. But why is it that the news tends to be so negative?
Well, Melbourne first and foremost is I think a big news town. Like, I don't know why, but Melbourne has this knack of producing big news stories. Big things happen, big controversies happen. Unfortunately, big accidents and crisis happen. It's just always been a news town. It's a really good question. I mean, we don't chase bad stories by any stretch. We're happy to lead a news bulletin with something that is a great celebration. A hero here. A win for the community, so forth. But I think just by virtue of the news cycle, shit happens, and we have a duty to report on it and report on it as accurately, as possible with all the facts. I probably get a little bit frustrated these days because there is a bit of a distrust of mainstream media, if you will. I had this conversation with a mate last weekend. He assumed or thought that we just made up stories. There's this narrative around journos making up stories, sort of like, I've never made up a story in my life. And I don't know any journo in our newsroom that has ever made up a story. It just doesn't happen. And we aren't dictated to by anybody, be it, a political party, a community member. I like to think, just reporting the facts. But I get people, everyone has an opinion on the news cycle and what happens. In terms of what I've seen and what I reported. So just to explain, I'm in sport now, but once upon a time I started out as a general news reporter. And there are stories that stay with me. I was a very young, very green reporter. And one of the stories which actually always stays with me is a story in Mildura. There were a whole bunch of school kids or teenagers who were walking home from a party late at night in Cardross. And there was a drunk driver who lost control of his vehicle. He was driving dangerously as well. And he careered into that group of school kids. they were teenagers. 6 kids died. A host of others survived the impact, but it was horrendous. It was horrendous. I was one of the first journos on the scene the following morning, and it's something that always stays with me. One of the beautiful fathers who lost 2 kids, a son and a daughter, in that car crash, still texts me to this day just to check in, he felt a connection to me, and I still feel a very strong connection to him. So there are sort of moments in my career which, I still think about a lot, and I think it's also a good thing in many respects, because it shows that as a journo I care, and it does make me think, because I like to think that we are sort of also we're doing a job. We're an information service, and that trust is really important to me. And also telling people stories, be it good, be it horrendous, sometimes at times as well.
Got some breaking news, D. I'm sorry to interrupt this episode with Clint, but we need to thank our good friends at Fleet Plan Hire Solutions. They are the best in the business, the number one in all things earth-moving projects, big or small.
That's it. When you're talking big, we're talking tunnels, roads, bridges. When you're talking small, that could be the jobs that you might need doing, and you might need some assistance with your hire needs. Go to FBH. They're the ones to talk to.
They've got everything you need. Head to fbh.com.au to find out more today.
Now, are you ready to hear some more news from Clint?
Bring it on.
It's when you talk about trust, I've never thought trust in terms of making stories up, but a lot of people... You asked about how we consume news. I know a lot of people just say, I only consume news which is independent journalism or independent news sources, whatever that means. Have you seen throughout your career, because when it comes to trust, I feel people talk about political bias.
Yeah.
So some stations are, that's left-leaning,
Yeah.
others are right-leaning, supposedly. Have you ever had conversations
Never.
in-house about, I was more asking... not we're going to push something, but we need to be seen to be more moderate?
No, you're presenting the facts.
Yeah.
If you've got a politician of this persuasion, telling you this, well, you've got to balance the story.
Yeah.
You have to. That's
100%.
That's your job as a reporter. And I've again just never been dictated to by anyone about any story I've reported, and I know that's the same for other journos, my colleagues, be it in Melbourne, Sydney, Canberra, in bureaus around the world. So, I get it. Let's just strip it back a little bit, because I find AFL Trade Week really interesting.
Yeah.
Because
as does everybody in this room.
Here's this thing where supporters of clubs, they think ill of the media if one of their players is suddenly their name's up in lights. Oh, you got that wrong. He was never going. He was never interested in, a career at Carlton. It happened with Christian Petrarca. Well,
that would have touched the heartstrings a little bit.
Did, as a Melbourne supporter.
This is a personal experience we're talking about here.
But here's the thing, it didn't just come out of nowhere.
Yeah, of course.
You're not just pulling Christian Petrarca's name out of a hat and going, okay, let's make sure he gets to Carlton or Collingwood. There are rumblings, and there are people talking and people calling you and all the rest.
The one story that we were both really, really interested and keen on, and obviously a few years back now, but was the Beaconsfield Mines. And what an experience that was. I'll never forget. I can't remember what year was that, Clint? If you knew off the top of your head. I remember being...
I want to say 04, 05.
I remember being a kid and waking up every morning for the update of that. Is there any update?
It's early 2000s.
Yeah.
It was an extraordinary story, and I was a very, very green journo, and I was sent down as a band of Channel 9 reporters. And this is a story where you've got a very, very small town in northwestern Tasmania who suddenly is thrust onto the world map, right? It's not just people in Tasmania or Australia talking, it's people globally. So they hated it. Obviously there was anguish and despair in equal parts for the poor miners who were trapped, and one, Larry Knight, who so tragically lost his life. But, suddenly the world's media is on their doorstep. So first and foremost, that was hard for the community. Secondly, the story itself there was some immense highs, but there was also a real low and a real reality check when news came through that Larry didn't survive, that Todd and Brant thankfully escaped with their lives. So it was really, really hard for so many reasons. And then in the days that followed, you saw this town sort of, it was a really tough one because they're mourning the loss of one of their own, but they're also celebrating the fact that two of their own have survived this near catastrophic event for them. One of my favourite memories of that time was 24 hours had passed since the boys were freed, and Channel 9 was trying to do an exclusive deal to tie them down for their first interview. And as part of that, they were at a pub with their mates, which was sort of just off the beaten track, maybe 10 minutes out of town. Todd and Brant were. Anyway, the likes of Eddie Maguire and a few others were trying to negotiate the deal. Anyway, we went to dinner, just me, my cameraman, and a sound recordist. We thought, let's hit up that pub. Anyway, we walked in, doors swung open. It's one of those moments at a pub when everyone just sort of, who are these guys? And Todd and Brant were sitting at the bar having a Carlton draft, 24 hours with their mates. Yeah. 24 hours after one of the worst things had happened to them, but also, thankfully, they just escaped with their lives. And I went up, I was able to go up and shake their hands and say, geez, you've got an amazing story to tell. I hope you get the chance to do it on your terms. So. How
long were they in there?
It was days. Yeah, it would have been, I think it was about 10 days.
So in a scenario like that,
need to fact check me on that. Just trying to, the memory bank isn't as good as it once was.
Yeah. You're competing with market share in that instance, right? You're all trying to get number one, all stations. So I'm sure it's not just 9 that are there. It's 7. It's it's SBS or ABC. It's everyone is there trying to get this story. What are the lengths that you go to?
Got one.
What's that?
I've got one.
Okay. What are the lengths you go to in that scenario to get that exclusive story?
Well, just sticking with the Beaconsfield theme, sort of a couple of days had passed. There was a big sort of, back in the heyday of the footy show, there was a big footy show special where Eddie and the boys were down there. They did a big sort of concert and they rallied the town. But Todd and Brant were doing this sit-down interview with Channel 9 with 60 Minutes with Tracy Grimshaw. And as part of that, they needed to shoot a sequence of Todd and Brant around Beaconsfield, but they had to do it in an exclusive sense. So the 7s, the 10s, ABCs of this world couldn't be there. And at that stage, a lot of the media the mass media had sort of packed up. The story was done outside of the interview because 9 had signed it, and they'd gone back to the Melbourne, Sydney. But a small band of media had remained. So we needed to get our rivals out of town for a day so that they could, get some shots of the boys around town, meeting with locals, down the pie shop, down the pub, out the front of the mine. So my cameraman at the time came up with this genius idea. Hey, there's not much going on in town today, guys. There's a mini golf facility about 50, 60 Ks down the road. Why don't we just go down there for the afternoon, grab some lunch and just chill? Because there's not much happening in Beaconsfield today. Waited for the response. They're like, yeah, let's do it. Yeah, let's do it. And lo and behold, once we'd got the convoy out of town,
swooped in.
Around town they went, getting all the shots, telling all the stories, meeting all the locals. Yeah, so there is a fair bit of rivalry.
Definitely.
And it's good. It's a healthy rivalry as well. I mean, it happens to this day. There are journos on the road who are competing for a story. It's a bit of fun.
Speaking of rivalries and Channel 9, did you ever have anything to do with Kerry Packer? Did you ever meet Kerry or have dealings with him?
I didn't meet him. I remember one day at 9 in Bendigo Street, the old Channel 9 in Richmond, and I remember I walked in for the day and the security told me I had to wear my security badge and I was like, security badge, we don't have to wear them. Like, what's going on? He goes, no, you've got to wear your security badge. And walked through the corridors. I thought, this is a bit odd. Everyone's got their security badges on. Pressed the button for the lift to go up to the newsroom on level 2. So on ground, the lift doors opened, and there's KP.
KP.
In all his glory. Big Kerry. And he just had this... It was such a quick interaction. I don't think I said anything, but I sort of saw him, and I was just... He had an aura about him. And I wouldn't even say that... I mean, there wasn't a fear, but it was like, shit, that's Kerry Packer. Yeah. That's the boss. So, yeah, just a very limited interaction, but he had a presence, a big presence.
Who have been some of your, I guess, closer mentors throughout your time at Nine?
I've got a few. I've got so many, to be honest. Well, there's straight away, I sit next to Tony Jones, TJ, who has one of the quickest wits in not just in television, because he does radio very well, also just in media. He's so quick, he's so funny, but he's also just a beautiful writer. So I've spent a lot of time sitting beside Tony. He's got a bit of a temper as well, which can be quite entertaining. I like poking the bear, which is a bit of fun. So there's TJ. I've worked a lot with Alicia Loxley, who, is just one of the consummate professionals. She's now our 6 p.m. presenter on the news, and I had the sort of pleasure of sitting beside her as a 6 p.m. Sport presenter, and she was then weekend presenter. So she's also a great mate of mine as well. So probably those two.
On TJ, just clear the air here.
Yeah.
Does he love chompers, or is this a joke that he's happy to just go with for the
So for anyone who's listening, I would encourage them when they see TJ to call him chompers, because he loves it.
He loves it.
Oh, he does love it.
I think chompers really made him. It sort of elevated him in a sense.
Yeah.
I think it did too.
It's given him, and he won't mind me saying this, I think it's given him relevance with people our age, right? Like, you should see him at the MCG on a Friday night footy. The people that come up to him, want photos with him, want autographs, chompers, walking out of the G after a few schooners at the Frank Gray Smith or Percy Beams bar, people are just swarming him.
Flock to him.
They just want to be around. And he's really good with people as well. He's got to a stage now where he's like, well, I've got to embrace it.
Yeah.
So fair enough.
Oh, well, there you go, everybody. Chompers, it is. That's what we'll be rolling with.
He's going to kill me now.
Chompity chomp chomp.
And that clip will do well, I guarantee.
Yeah.
So just going back a couple of steps, and we talked about the mining and all that sort of stuff. So the effect it had on you, especially covering heavy stories day to day, especially as like a really young bloke, reading a little bit about you, and you kind of fell into the whole media landscape.
Yep.
By accident almost, and now being thrust into this world of reporting these real heavy, like witnessing death of family members. What does that do to a young bloke?
It's hard, and I won't lie, you still think about it.
Yeah.
You absolutely do. Thankfully these days, I mean, to paint a picture of what it's like now, and again, this whole evolution of journalism and media, journos these days are probably a little bit more, a bit better equipped. There are counsellors, and there are workshops and the like to deal with this sort of thing, and there probably wasn't back 10, 15 years ago when I was a general news reporter. So there's no easy fix, I guess. I think going back and being able to talk to your colleagues was a big part of it, and just doing your best to have a distraction. I've spoken to a lot of people who have been, clearly very deeply affected by news stories, so much so they've got to leave the industry.
Yeah.
I won't name names, but there are friends of mine who have got out of media because it's just relentless. It's just too much. And I think the same goes for, emergency services, paramedics, police officers, firefighters. Not putting us in that category, but we do still see tragedy, and it's hard to deal with.
I just can't imagine how you have you could
Well,
have
there's
a
a young
conversation
reporter
with
as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, how do you have a conversation with a potential grieving mum that's like, it's just hours after something tragic's happened? I don't even know how you tackle that.
Yeah, well, you do, and the next distraction being be at the 6 p.m. news, where you sort of just got to get your job done, just got to move on as quickly as you can, and again, like, you know, I used the example before of the Mildura situation, and a father who I still have dealings with, and, you know, still in many respects grieve with. You know, he uses me as a means to talk through how he's feeling. The fellow who was charged and later jailed in regards to that incident, his name came up the other day because with an incident involving him and driving again. So there's always going to be a few cobwebs that linger.
In that situation, like I can imagine you have to have a really strong EQ. Like, you have to really have your emotional button switched on and know how to interact and read someone's emotions really, really well. But you got put in that job. I'm not sure if they chose you specifically because they knew you had that, or did you find at times when you might have been, say, asking the questions and feeling like you had a read on it, the response wasn't quite what you wanted back?
I mean, I'm a curious person, but I'm also, I'd like to think, a really empathetic person, and I'm a little bit softer in that regard. I mean, this is speaking across all facets of journalism. I'm not, you know, an in-your-face kind of operator. There are a few. It's a really difficult one because I pride myself on relationships and building those relationships with people, but you can't let it become when it becomes a friendship, it can be a little bit difficult, especially when you're dealing with victims of crime and the like. It's a difficult one to straddle.
We actually,
Andrew Rule, to say that.
Andrew Rule, crime journo and author, and he spoke about that. He said, you know, when you're sitting down with these families, it's almost like to a point where you become their confidant, and almost like a shoulder to lean,
like a counsellor.
Yeah, and he's talking about having to talk to the crooks too.
Yeah,
like he has to talk to them and get their side as well. And it
puts you in a hard spot.
Yeah, speaking of curious, he's one of the most curious people I've met, and just such a great operator.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you haven't listened to that one,
there you go. There's a plug.
So there's that side of things, but then there's the other side of it too, which is the positives and the good stories, the fun.
Yeah, let's get this uplifting.
We want to get uplifted. And Sammy's going to play a clip because I think we want to have a look at some of your best work in Qatar.
Oh, here we go.
Which I thought was a completely dry country, which I just learnt there was pockets. Was there? They were dry and
they made an exception for the Aussies.
Well, it's not. Here we go.
Here we go. We're going to play this, and then Clint can talk us through what's going on.
So this is a pub full of clearly Socceroos fans after a win. I think we just qualified out of our group.
We must. Oh, yeah. So we beat Denmark.
It was after the Denmark match, and we were going on to play.
Any volume? Yeah.
There we go. I think we just booked a meeting with Argentina.
Yeah, we. The shoey.
Old mate's doing a shoey.
Clint Stanaway. Like, you can't drag him out of the
Can't even hear him.
I couldn't hear a thing.
No.
Could not hear a thing.
These guys have been going all day and they're going to go all night. It's just gone 12:30 here.
I love that.
What about this? Unbelievable scenes. Okay. Time to
What a job you've got, Clint.
Okay, put me down. At that point, I'm going, how do I get out of this one? And also, we're live on television around Australia, and these guys could say or do anything.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
Qatar. So Qatar is a dry country, but in hotels are still allowed to have bars.
Okay.
And those bars during the World Cup were sort of marketed as places where fans could go for a beverage after or before a game. Yeah. But it was so expensive. A beer was... I heard that. A beer was something like $25, $26 for a schooner. It was outrageous, and it was the worst kind of beer as well.
Yeah. I would imagine. Yeah.
It was a lot of fun though. I've been lucky enough to go to 3 World Cups.
Yeah. Talk to us about these experiences.
So, been to Brazil. Brazil was the first one, which was just astonishing because it is football in its purest sense is played in places like Brazil.
That's all nice, Clint, but it's also you're a young bloke in Brazil, so there's that side of this.
I'm working every minute of every day.
Can't mix business and pleasure at the same time.
There's no fun to be had. Brazil, and then you counter that with 2 very strange countries, Russia. So I'm getting around Russia.
2018.
You're setting up a camera in the middle of the Red Square or wherever it is, and as soon as you put a camera on a tripod, just police and army just appear out of nowhere.
Wow.
And they're like, excuse me, what are you up to? What are you doing? Where's your permit?
So you
where are you from? Yeah.
Wow.
So that was weird. And then Qatar was weird again because we landed in Qatar, about a week before the tournament, and you could have sworn there was no tournament being played.
Yeah.
Like there was just no buzz around the place. It was just flat as a tack. And then on night 1, just people just emerged out of nowhere and the place just lit up. And it was actually probably one of the best World Cups I've been to. Major events I've been really lucky in my job. I just got back from, but this year from Paris for the Olympics.
Yep.
Which is really cool. So I've done a couple of Olympics, Games, British Open golf, been to the Masters. It's a pretty sick job to be able to do.
So from our perspective, right, we're watching telly. You're only on there for like a short period of time, right? So you're flying all the way across the world to report, whatever event it might be. So what are you getting up to the time away from screen? Well,
the problem is, I guess, with a lot of those places, the time difference is so extreme that, when the tournament or the match is on or being played, you're doing your thing, you're gathering for the news, for your 6 p.m. news report, and then by virtue of the time difference, you're staying up late to go live. So they're really long days. Like Paris, for instance, at the Olympics, I mean, we were the host broadcaster, so it was a big event. We were on 23 hours a day. So 9 was in an Olympic sense. So a day would start at 7, 8 a.m. and you'd be still going at 10 o'clock at night just because there are events on all the time and stuff to talk about, athletes to cover.
You say Carl? Yeah.
Still got the chance to have a few Pinots.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, we were laughing because the election coverage at Channel 9 we're doing, and Carl just having to stay up all through the night.
That's
the poor bugger was just knackered by the end of it.
He's a trooper.
Couldn't believe it.
He'd find time to have some fun.
Sure. Well, I was going to ask you about the length. What's the most length you've gone to get a scoop? So the other day I was driving to your house actually, and I was driving down Punt Road and the Demons were out training. It might have been day 1, then going up past Richmond, the Tigers were out. And I just saw this camera from one of the news stations, and they were just planted so far beyond, so far zoomed in.
We call that long end of the lens.
Yeah, mate, you could go a lot closer, but it was like they wanted to be secret about it. I think they were trying to get Clayton Oliver and his day back. But what's the biggest length you've gone to get a scoop? Have you ever had to sneak in somewhere or
lied your way?
Yeah, we like the little fibs or white lies.
Do you know what? This is going to be an incredibly boring answer, but okay. I'm actually, given I'm sort of doing more presenting now, I don't have to do as much of that coalface style reporting, which I'm pretty thankful for. Going back, I'm quite an awkward person. I hate confrontation. I just retreat straight away, and I don't really like being sneaky in that sense. So I'm probably not that sort of reporter. There are plenty out there who there's a few little techniques that they use, but no, I'm pretty.
That's a good answer.
I'm pretty. No, I am. I'm a bit. I'm a bit shit scared, to be honest.
You know what, Clint? You remind me a lot of myself.
Confrontation just isn't my thing.
Fair enough.
Makes 2 of us. Before we jump, I know we want to get to the radio, Clint.
Yep.
We've touched on footy the slightest bit. I know Sammy's got that famous photo of Clint.
Yes.
Because obviously, Clint, you're a mad Melbourne fan. I don't know if you're mad, but you're a Demon supporter.
Yeah, so I was born into a Melbourne family.
Yep.
My old man and my grandparents rusted on Melbourne supporters, forever and ever. So this is a photo in 1996. Melbourne and Hawthorn were slated to merge, and maybe 48 hours before the actual vote was made public, we had these meetings. This one was at the Dallas Brooks Hall, and that is me. I'm 15 at the time.
I thought a minute ago I don't like confrontation, and then we're saying this, saying this image.
Here he is.
As a kid.
I'm yelling abuse at the then board of the Melbourne Football Club because they were, for all intents and purposes, effectively getting rid of the Melbourne Football Club as we know it. Thankfully, the vote, as it turns out, courtesy of Hawthorn, didn't get up. But that is a very angry and passionate 14-year-old who loves his footy club.
Was this a Diamond Joe days?
Yeah, it is. So Diamond Joe presented that night.
Oh, he took over that night, you'd say?
Well, sorry, he presented that night.
Sorry, yep.
And he ended up taking, he swept to power in a sense, and he took over as president of the footy club. But the emotion in that room that night was something. I still say it was one of the best nights of free entertainment I've ever had, because it was actually, whilst it was horrendous to think about what could have happened to the footy club that I love and my family loves, it was actually really entertaining.
It's a historical moment. Did you, in 2021, did you manage to get over there in COVID?
I didn't, no.
Oh, really? I thought
so. I had the AFL offered to put me on the plane and have me as part of the bubble, but I just couldn't make it work because I had radio commitments here, had TV as well, so it just didn't work. But something I hold so dear is that my dad, who is John Stanaway, shout out, a life member of the Melbourne Footy Club, so he's been involved with the Ds for 27, I think this is his 27th year. So he's head trainer at the footy club. He thinks, he treats the boys like they are his family. It's just really, really lovely to see. So he went as part of the bubble, and he got to see Melbourne win a premiership, the first one he's seen, which I was just so, I actually get quite emotional talking about it, because he was swept up. We were swept up. He was FaceTiming us, celebrating with the boys on Optus Stadium.
Wow.
And it was so nice that he got to see it.
Yeah.
And he got to be part of it.
Special.
We were in lockdown here.
Yeah.
So
he's a Doggies fan too, so
yeah,
it's
right.
opposite emotion.
I got 2016 though. So.
Exactly. So, and you saw it live.
Yeah. I got to go.
Guess who's St Kilda and still waiting.
Hey, but here's the thing. Everyone, I mean, I've still not seen one live, but at least I've seen one, right?
Yeah.
And everyone, be it my Collingwood supporting friends, my Essendon supporting friends way back in 2000, they always said, don't worry, you will see one. And I'm like, get off it. That's easy for you to say.
Yeah.
But as it turns out,
it will happen.
we saw one.
Yeah.
It'll happen.
Yeah.
It'll happen.
Yeah,
I'm hoping for you.
Yeah.
It was still like watching that on a TV screen, hundreds of kilometres away. It was still really nice.
Of course.
It was, it was amazing. I just hope I see one in the MCC members at some stage.
I hope for your sake you do too. Do you want to jump into the first segment?
I think that's a great idea. So are we going to do Tour Edge first?
Yeah, let's do
let's
Tour
do
Edge
Tour
first.
Edge
Sammy's going to bring over the Tour Edge 725 series.
Do you play golf, by the way, Clint?
I do. I play golf. Everyone says they play golf badly. I'm a safety first golfer, so I don't tend to get the drivers out. I'm very much just an iron guy off the tee, which is really like it probably says a bit about me. But if you're on a first tee anywhere, you won't see me pulling out a driver.
I don't mind
It's just a 3-iron.
It's smart on
just
the
hit
first,
it clean
on the
off the first tee.
Yeah.
When there's so many. There's no worse feeling than when you can feel the people watching.
It's horrible.
It's a shocking
it's
feeling,
the worst
isn't it?
thing. Well, this is why we love the 725 series, Clint, because again, I mean, it actually, firstly, if you're not
They're a
great
nice
at
set of
golf,
clubs.
They are.
yeah, I mean, grab one if you can grab one and have a look if you like. But they make you look the part too on the
Yeah,
golf
they
course,
do.
don't they, Dawson? But what about the precision?
Oh, well, for me personally, I'm not great. So I can still look like I'm a decent golfer with these. I think that's the beauty of
You'd
it.
look like a king on a public course with them.
Oh,
wouldn't you?
absolutely, and actually, it's a very light bag. It's actually they're phenomenal looking clubs, and they really focus on the accuracy and precision. But we do say to everybody listening and watching, go follow 2Edge on Instagram, isn't it right?
Tour Edge AU.
Yes.
They've got plenty of competitions and giveaways and stuff. So who knows?
Imagine winning these clubs.
Yeah, if
Imagine
you
winning them.
Give them a follow.
Shout out.
Stay updated. You might win a set.
Now, the segment we're doing today, Clint, for 2Edge is the show and tell segment.
Oh, yeah.
So we've asked you to bring in an item
Yes.
that has some kind of meaning or something that's impacted your life. We'd love to hear what that is.
Yeah, I thought about it a bit when you flagged it with me, and I wear an item which is pretty dear to me. I'll try and get it off. It's a ring.
If not, just get a close up of
It's
that.
a signet ring.
Russell.
Here you go. Have a hoon of this.
Oh, gee. Okay.
So that's my great grandfather's signet ring. It's about, we think about 85 years old.
Wow.
I've recently had it all polished up and resized, and I wear it almost every day, except when I'm playing golf or something like that.
Well done.
Do you like that?
Yeah,
I
well
loved
done.
it.
So that's got my
Wow.
grandfather's initials emblazoned on it. So William James Guy Stanaway. I met him, but it was, I was very, very young. I was a little baby. I love family history.
Yeah.
I'm so invested in it. I'm one of these tragics who love on YouTube. I love reunion videos. I'm a real softie.
What are they?
Reunion
Oh,
videos.
Oh, yeah,
when you,
yeah,
you
I
know when you-
can't. It's the dog ones. I can't do
Oh, I
them.
know.
Oh, that's
It's
sad.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I love stories about people who find long lost relatives, or even people tracing their family trees and
Yeah.
finding
Yeah.
really cool little tidbits about their ancestors. So William James Guy Stanaway he was born in Wales, and he was a tin miner in a very small Welsh mining town. He went to World War One, and he thankfully came back from the war, and he became what is known as a 10-pound pom. So he was shipped out to Australia, got his 10 pounds, landed in Victoria, and went up to the mines in Ballarat, met my great grandmother. They relocated to Melbourne, and he started working in the railways. He was like a man of very simple pleasures, and he wasn't showy. But this is something that he wore every day of his adult life, and something that very recently I discovered. We were cleaning up my grandmother's house in Mount Waverley, and she had it stashed. And I asked Dad if I could wear that. And it's just a nice little, family means everything to me. I'm a big family man. I just, my mum, my dad, thank you. My mum, my dad, it sounds a bit corny, but they're my heroes. I treasure every moment I get to spend with them, and they are the things they've done for our family. I don't know anyone who has provided for his family like my dad.
Yeah.
So it's just a nice little reminder of family.
Mate,
Beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Yeah,
and
it's
it's
really
great.
nice.
Thank you so much for sharing
Yeah.
that with us. That was awesome. It was great to hear that. And yeah,
I just find I've had it shined recently, and I just quite
looks
like
great,
looking
yeah.
at it as
Got
well.
it in good
It's
nick.
probably the closest thing to a wedding ring.
I did notice it when you walked in, funny enough.
A purely single man.
Do you want to get those? Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And again, thank you to 2Edge.
Have you ever jumped on Ancestry.com and...
No, I
look?
genuinely have
Yeah.
thought about it. Yeah.
Mum and Dad were actually in this small Welsh town, the tin mining town, recently, and they were trying to. There's 50 houses there now, so they were trying to track down any other traces of Stanaway. And Mum goes, "We found 2 Stanaways," and I'm like,
there you
"You're
go.
kidding me? Where are you?" And what are their names? And she goes, nah, they're in the ground. I'm looking at their stones right now. I'm like, oh, okay, righto. That didn't end well.
Well, actually, I might. You've reminded me. That's a great Christmas present too.
100%. Yeah, we had one recently on my mum's side. I won't go too long here, but yeah, a long lost cousin of my mum's.
Was it?
They
Just
didn't even
appeared
know
out
she
of
was
nowhere?
born. They didn't even know.
Wow.
Yeah, and they had a big family reunion about 3 or 4 months ago.
That freaks me out as well when you hear about people who get the
Yeah,
knock at the
that's
door.
what it was.
Hey, you don't know me, but I'm your brother.
Yeah.
Like, that's unreal.
I think it was a Facebook message.
It's worse when that happens when somebody's died and they're after
after you
a bit of inheritance. Because I actually have witnessed that at a
We're
funeral
related.
before. Not
Surprise.
kidding. Yeah, it was a family once. There was these long lost. They came from the other side of the world, and suddenly, they knew everything about everyone. We want to talk about radio too.
Yeah.
Because you just said number one. Congratulations. Firstly, how do they actually work out number ones and polls and that sort of stuff? Because I've never understood that.
I sort of don't understand TV ratings and I don't understand radio ratings
Fair enough, you
either.
just take
but
it, yeah.
From what I know, every 7-8 weeks, Melburnians or Victorians are delivered a book.
Yep.
And effectively, you are asked at random. By the way, you are asked to tick a column in a book as per what you're listening to. There's also wearables like watches which can record the data as well, which seems like the better alternative. But yeah, so it's quite an antiquated type system.
Sorry, so they wear what?
So there's two forms. So there's a wearable which can track or
what you're listening
exactly
to?
what you're listening
wow.
to, and then there's also the older school form, which is the actually tick a box in an exercise book, which is your more traditional survey, and then they average out the responses, and that's how you.
So when they talk points, up points, down points, what does that typically mean?
So it's just a big pie chart, basically. So you divide the pie chart. At the moment, we're sitting on an 11 share, so 11% of your overall radio listening audience listen to
What
us.
are Kyle and Jackie O on?
Not on an 11, that's for sure.
There you go.
Well, we did want to hear a little bit about what just happened in the last, it's been about 12 months now.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, somehow you've found yourself in the thick of it. I mean,
Yeah.
well done.
I mean,
It's nice to be on a winning team.
Yeah, it must be.
well, at the moment, it was full on. Like this time last year, in fact, almost 12 months to the day, we were given our marching orders from ARN or KISS, as it's known, which was really, really hard to cop because in terms of results, we'd started a really nice progression. We were building some nice numbers, and in the last survey of the year, I think we pulled a 9 or a 9.2, which put us at number 2 in Melbourne FM. So, it was building really nicely. We were having a lot of fun, and then the rumblings started to happen, and lo and behold, we were given the tap on the shoulder and said, for Lauren and myself especially, that our contracts wouldn't be renewed, which meant that the show was done, and I certainly thought that was it, because there's only so many FM radio stations, so it's very hard to win a prize spot on an FM network, especially here in Melbourne where the competition is extraordinary. And thankfully, in the summer, in the weeks and months that passed, Nova came to us. They were making some arrangements with their current lineup, and there was going to be an availability for us to step up in breakfast. And thankfully, it's all gone really, really well so far. It's been professionally, hand on heart, probably the most enjoyable 12 months of my life. It's been so satisfying, so rewarding, and the show's just in a really nice spot.
Sounds so cutthroat. Is it typically 12 months? Is it always 12-month contracts?
No, everyone's
different.
Yeah. Everyone sort of is a bit different. But when we got the news, it hurt a lot.
Yeah.
Actually, I'd never been fired from any job in all of my days, be it at Safeway back in the days, Target, and then Channel 9.
You're a people's person, Clint. That's what I love about you.
But it was like, it was in part, it wasn't humiliating. That's probably not the word, but it was just hard to cop. And because it was so public and everyone was talking about it as well, it was just magnified. And it was hard not to take personally. But what was beautiful or brilliant was the sort of response we got in the days and weeks that followed. You know, the city sort of got behind us and supported us and then celebrated with us when we were lucky enough to land this gig at Nova, which has been remarkable. It's been so much fun.
Did they say to you in that sit down or phone call, hey, we're bringing in Kyle and Jackie O?
Again, we'd heard rumblings and we each got a phone call from different people. I remember my phone call. It was, there is no future for your show. And yes, we're networking Kyle and Jackie O.
That's brutal.
It was brutal. It's hard to cop, especially when, you know, for all intents and purposes, we're onto a good thing. And Melbourne was responding. And Melbourne has responded.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I was going to ask, I mean, it's not necessarily what others are doing wrong, but what would you credit your success, the show's success to?
We're real local. You know, we're a Melbourne show made for Melbourne in Melbourne, which isn't a jab at what they're doing north of the border, but here we are broadcasting out of South Melbourne, and if you compare us to that other duo, they're broadcasting out of North Sydney.
Yeah.
So by virtue of geography,
but
you join the dots. I think
to be top of every
yeah,
like,
we
not
are.
just them. But
I mean, we're three really good mates.
Yeah.
I've been friends with Lauren Phillips for an eternity, for near on 20 years. And things with Jace, Lauren and myself, it just sort of works. Jace often tells us there's breakfast radio shows that he's worked on in the past, and he's seen that in ad breaks, the hosts don't talk.
Yeah.
You know, because breakfast hours are hard, right? It's relentless. And, you know, they just haven't been the best friends. Whereas this show is quite the opposite. We are three great mates and we're three very curious people. And I think at the moment we're just in a nice groove.
I'm glad you said that because we've had this conversation before on the show with other people, and when we talk about chemistry, typically that's what they talk about. It's not just, oh, we'll grab him or grab her and we'll just thrust them together.
Yeah.
When there's a bit of a backstory or a bit of a relationship there, that seems to be what people credit the formula to.
I think we give each other space as well. There's been some, really, really great moments that we've celebrated together, but also we've each sort of had our a few low moments as well that we'll give each other space on air to talk about. And we're not scared to give Melbourne the chance to respond as well. It's just a really nice, I feel as though we're just in a nice spot.
Do you have an example of that maybe?
Jace, I'm sure he won't mind me talking about it because he's spoken about it on radio, but he lost both of his parents in the last couple of years. So giving him the space to sort of, first and foremost, grieve privately, but then also talk about it on the radio. We ran as far as I'm concerned, I travel a lot, like a hell of a lot. So every weekend I'm on a plane to Sydney for the Today Show. And by virtue of that, I spoke about the fact that when I get to Sydney, I'm in a hotel room and, there's a bit of a loneliness factor at play just because I don't know anyone. At the time, I didn't know anyone up there, and it was just really playing on my mind. And one morning, I decided to talk about it. This sort of notion of loneliness in a more micro sense, because I know I've got my network, my friends, my family in Melbourne. But when I jumped on a plane to Sydney, I was real lonely, and it impacted on me. It impacted me socially, took away a bit of confidence that I had. So we spoke about it, and then I shit you not, the phones they lit up like a Christmas tree, just exploded. People going, yeah, I feel the same. Like it's hard for adults to make adult friends.
Yeah.
Like, because you think about a lot of the friends that you've got are friends that are either friends from footy, from work, from school, pre-existing networks. But how often do we actually go out and make friends as adults? So we ended up running this campaign whereby we put on a night which we encouraged people to come along, but it was a plus none party. So you couldn't bring a plus one. So
That's a great idea.
You were there, and if someone was feeling just a bit lonely, a bit disconnected, they came around, they spoke to like-minded people, hung out with like-minded people, which is really cool. Something that affected me, again, in a very micro sense, because of geography and my work. I was able to bring that, illustrate that, and we got something pretty special off the back of it.
There's a big difference between loneliness and being alone, like, you know, and especially for people in the public eye, like people typically would associate someone that has a bit of, you know, like people know who you are.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean though that the loneliness factor isn't there.
Yeah.
And it's interesting hearing people talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, I felt really, when I say it impacted on me, it was more my confidence. I couldn't believe that everything I had down here I couldn't replicate in another place. And I just found myself sitting around, not so much feeling sorry for myself, but sort of just questioning, you know, why can't you get out and go to the pub or go for a walk, go to the gym and chat to people, meet people? But I just didn't really want to do it because I didn't have the confidence to do it. So it's incredible how it manifests.
You actually, so I think it was before you got to Nova. It was when you were at KISS and you went. My mum works at a primary school.
Oh yeah.
And you were going to, I don't know if you were going to different primary schools, but you went to their primary school, and they were in Mahogany Rise in Frankston, and you actually, I think you gifted my mum, or she won a prize, and she got a 2-night getaway in Melbourne or something. Yeah. So
the prize cupboard is a big one.
Bloody hell. She was very thankful for that, mate.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we do some really cool things in radio as well. I never knew that I would be so invested in radio as I am. Like I sort of fell into it like I fell into TV, but I'm so bloody glad I did because I have so much fun doing it. And, you know, there's nothing more exhilarating than opening the phone lines and not really knowing what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And again, I speak about curiosity, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but, you know, opening yourself up, but then getting people to open up because they trust you and because they like you is quite empowering and quite nice.
And a big skill in that too.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Like a huge skill. Our prize pack today might not be up to the same levels, but we do have one coming for you later. But before we do, it's time to bring in, Sammy's going to bring in the Bayford Ford mystery box, Clint.
Mystery box.
Now, the mystery
Great.
box is exactly what it sounds
Not
like.
a
It's full of
MasterChef
mystery.
Mystery box?
No.
It's there's a few
Thank
questions
goodness for
and
that.
challenges in there. All you have to do is pick one out, answer that said challenge or question, and then there'll be a prize for you too.
Before you do that, I just want to say a couple of quick words about Bayford.
Oh, please do,
Bayford
Dos.
Ford.
Where is Bayford Ford?
We're not pulling one out, are we? Oh. I was like, no, this is Clint's segment.
Where did you say?
Can I have a peek at this, by the way?
You can,
You can have a little peek.
peek 'cause you can.
But basically, Bayford Ford, you know, when you go into a car yard or
Yes.
somewhere where, you know, you might be purchasing a car, when you go out to Epping, there's entertainment for the kids. They've got a cinema room. I think they've got a games room
They
as
do.
well.
They do.
So when mum and dad want to, you know, do a bit of test driving, the kids can just sit in there and they're entertained, and mum and dad can be driving all day.
It's a playground for adults too.
It
I mean,
is,
you just
it
go
is.
test drive the cars. They're unbelievable, and the customer care is number one. Too,
Clint,
so.
what did you pull out?
It says, what is the strangest thing you've been caught doing in public?
Ooh. Do you have an answer for that?
I've got a couple of...
It'd be beautiful.
I've got a
That's what we
couple.
like. That's what I like to hear.
This is a radio thing, and I had no idea about it, but I was actually kidnapped from the studio and hooded, put in a car, and then put on a gigantic tennis umpire's chair. It was on Flemington Road, and I had the hood on with a big banner behind me which says, "Where is Clint Stanaway?" with the number for our phone number. And I had to guess where I was based on clues which were given from the public.
Like cryptic clues.
Cryptic clues.
Wow.
And I wasn't allowed to leave the chair until I got it right. So That took up 3 hours of our radio show that morning.
That's a great idea.
The more that's strange. The more controversial. I've spoken about this on radio, but I probably shouldn't. I will though.
That's what we love.
You know when you really need to have a leak.
Yes.
You really need to go to the toilet.
Yeah.
So I was in Cancun in Mexico.
So the drinks were flowing by the sounds.
The drinks were flowing. We'd been partying all night, and to get from one end of the nightclub district of Cancun to the resort district, you got to get a minibus, and they run quite regularly, but it's a long trek. And I needed to go to the toilet, right? So get on the bus, busting. Thankfully, get off, and I'm like, I can't wait. I've got to go to the toilet behind this bush here. So I did. Lo and behold, big spotlight. I'm like, what on earth is that? No. What on earth is that? Spotlight. No. It's the police. It's the local police. I'm like, you're kidding me. I've sort of been caught with my pants down, having a wee in public.
Is this midstream as well? Or is it?
Well, as midstream as you can get. As it turns out, well, first and foremost, he grabbed me and he sort of, I don't want to say he threw me against the car, but he was quite aggressive.
Forceful.
So put me against the car, put my hands in handcuffs, and I sort of looked up, and it wasn't it was a tree, but it was a tree outside a police station. So in effect, I was actually
pissing at the cop shop
on a police station.
No. You must have been hammered if you didn't realise that.
I was very young, very stupid at the time as well. Anyway, as it works over there, he sort of said to me in broken English, you got two options. Mm-hmm. You can spend a night in a Mexican jail, or you can empty the contents of your wallet into my hand. We shake hands and we go. I was pretty confident I had about $50 American in the wallet. So I go, let's go the wallet option.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I dipped in the pocket, pulled out a 50 and shook his hand and did not look back.
Oh, that is a great. That's might be my favourite mystery box story.
Yeah, that's a ripper.
That was fantastic.
That light, I still remember the sound. Just. And I'm like, what is this? My friend who was tanked at the time, and I still remember this clear as day as well. He had his mobile phone and he said, do you mind if I take a photo of this? To which the copper said, absolutely not. Turn around, walk that way.
They must make an absolute packet. When I was in America, I was in San Diego, very close to Tijuana, and I'd heard so many of these stories, and quite innocent ones of just emptying your wallet. I'm like, I don't even want to bother with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you can get yourself into trouble overseas, can't you?
Yeah, definitely.
That was the first and only time I've ever been in trouble with the law, by the way. Ever.
Well, great disclaimer.
Well, it sounds like you've travelled not just for work, you've travelled for pleasure too, that's good.
That's what we like to hear. Maybe we'll talk a bit more off air. Sammy, bring over the Milkman. So we'll start bringing out some of the gifts. The first one for you, Clint, is from our good friends at Milkman Australia. And they're giving you a nice little, what would you call it, Dos?
Well, there's a fragrance and a natural deodorant.
The Milkman Grooming Co.
Yeah, we like to give you a nice little kit, which
fantastic
is going to keep you fresh and
smelling
great.
This will freshen you up just before the news tonight. There's inside there should be a cologne and a...
Love that. A parfum.
Yes,
perfume, yes.
And some deodorant there.
Thank you to the Milkman.
And then Sammy's got the little dos&d goodie bag, which we've got a few partners that have come on board to gift our guests some wonderful little items.
No Channel 7 merchandise in there.
There's no Channel 7. But we will say, though, if you do want to, especially Christmas gifts, coming up to Christmas, milkmanaustralia.com. Go and check that out.
Exactly right.
Oh, boys.
What's in the goodie bag, Dave?
Well, so you've done the Bayford Ford mystery box. Bayford have given you, there's a travel, that's some Musashi. You've got a couple
after
protein
gym,
bars.
Thank you, Musashi.
After gym games.
You got one for before and one for after. Bayford Ford, 2 Edge have given you some merch there. So there's a hat for the golf course and a glove. And then our major sponsors, Fleet Plan Hire, who everyone would have heard from prior to that, they've given you a little golf pack. So
thank you so much.
And of course, the dos&d tote bag.
Now that's the best bit of all of it. The dos&d tote bag, which you can take into your local... grocery store? Yeah, wherever.
Just wherever.
Your local farmer's market.
Where do we find you, Clint, online to follow you on socials?
On Insta, C Stanaway, at C Stanaway. I'm sort of quite active on Insta, not so much on the rest. I did download Truth Social the other day.
Oh, how is that?
So around the time of I was really invested in the American election.
Yeah,
I was just like... I loved it. Daily update.
Me too, yeah.
And I thought, what are these MAGA types?
Yeah.
What are they actually doing on Truth Social? So I downloaded it. Wow.
So
Isn't that an eye opener?
I thought it fell apart. So
Nah. She's
she's
yeah doing
Are you
a big.
acti- are
She's
you
doing a
active
big
on
trade now. No, I'm not active. Just downloaded
just have
it.
a little gaze. occasionally.
No, I don't tend to. I'm not on X these days. Oh, I am, but I'm not active.
I can't stand.
We need to get on X, actually. I was thinking about this recently. We start
do.
posting on
I just
there.
can't.
And when it comes to TikTok, I mean, at night before bed, I'm
it's
always
dangerous
just
though.
Sort
Yeah.
of.
I mean, we had a look on Clint's TikTok and
Yeah,
had a great little laugh.
What
One of the videos,
coffee cups?
coffee cups,
yeah.
classic.
How many times did I ask you to play it again?
Oh,
I was loving it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that
We're
was
talking
not-
about
I'm
names
not-
getting wrong by the barista written on the
I'm
cup.
not a TikToker, but
Yeah.
there are 2 videos. Yeah, the one you're alluding to is coffee cups. Clint is a name that is dangerous if you join the L and the I together. If you don't dot the I,
very dangerous.
So, and then for some reason, baristas everywhere just fuck it up.
Yeah.
Like there's just so many strange variations of Clint.
Don't quite understand how they do it. But
My favourite of all time is when somebody said, my name's Mark with a C, and they spelt it C-A-R-K. Cark. Just ridiculous.
that is just.
We
How does it
were
happen?
saying before, just before you came in, we were like, they must just do it. They must get bored and just do it on purpose sometimes.
Yeah, well, it might be all in promo. They're hoping that you put it up on socials.
That's it.
And
That's a
then
very
I
good
think Clint's Uber's here. I can
Yeah.
hear it beeping in.
Yeah, it's backing up the truck for all
It's
those
TJ.
gifts.
TJ's behind the wheel. Choppers, I'm on my way.
Well, we won't. Thank you so much, Clint. We really appreciate
Boys, thank
you joining
you.
us.
It's,
today.
as I said at
loved
the
it.
start, it's
Fuck, that's loud.
yeah, I'm
That is-
coming.
that is
so loud. Lads, settle down out there.
It's always a bit different to answer the questions, not
Yeah, I
ask them.
bet.
So it's
Well,
a
I
bit
hope
of
you've
fun.
enjoyed it.
Bit
Yeah.
of fun.
No, we've had a ball and we really appreciate it. We know you're busy, so thank you for taking some time out today. And yeah, we've
So just quickly, when do you think the Saints premiership will arrive?
it's Premier.
Well, a few good handy draft picks, apparently.
I do believe they're cursed. I do believe it. I actually do, but it wasn't until the Dogs won and then the D's. But my belief, I'm a Saints supporter, so I'm pessimistic, of course.
Yeah.
So I just don't think it's going to happen.
I always used to say that barracking for Melbourne was character building.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I feel you.
Well, here's an example, Clint. This is how you know St Kilda supporters. All St Kilda supporters, when you meet them with age, different demographics, it's like a badge of honour who's been through the hardest period. So saying you're a nearly 30-year-old Saints supporter, they go, oh, well, you're not old enough to have witnessed Moorabbin, freezing cold, mud, all this stuff. I'm like, well, okay, sorry.
I was at
born
Geelong when Melbourne got belted by 156 points.
Oh,
I don't
Dean
think
Bailey.
anything will ever top that.
early. Sammy's happy because he's a Geelong,
Cats.
he's a Cats man. That would have been a dark day.
That was
I've
a
actually
shocker.
worked at Casey for quite a few
Oh,
years and through some dark days for the D's. But we had some handy Casey players.
That's
that-
how
or the
Max
D's
Gawn
players.
and those
Gawney
boys.
was playing for the Scorps back in the day, not the Demons. They weren't the Demons back then, the Scorpions, but
They were the Scorps.
yeah, the Scorps.
That was back when he was smoking darts.
Yeah, on the
was.
way to training.
Who was that? Fitzpatrick? He was dominating?
Fitzy, Jack Fitzpatrick.
He was dominating.
And then he went to Hawthorn. So anyway, enough of the nuffy chat.
There's too much nubby chat.
That's
We'll let you
episode
go,
2.
Clint.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Good stuff, guys. Thank you.